You keep saying term limits. There are other presidential qualifications in the Constitution: age,
Yes.
citizenship. There's a separate amendment, the 22nd Amendment, that doesn't permit anyone to run for a second term. We have a history of states disqualifying, not all, but some, of disqualifying candidates who won't be of age if elected. We have a history of at least one state disqualifying someone who wasn't a U.S. citizen.
Right.
Are your arguments limited to Section 3?
Not quite. The question, Justice Sotomayor, is whether the state is violating term limits by adding to or altering the extant qualifications for the presidency in the Constitution. Now,
so you want us to say, I'm wondering why the term limits qualification is important to you.
Because
are you setting up so that if some president runs for a third term, that a state can't disqualify him from the ballot?
Of course a state can disqualify him from the ballot, because that is a qualification that is categorical. It's not defeasible by Congress. So a state is enforcing the Constitution when it says you can't appear on our ballot if you've already served 2 terms as president. The same
if they're underage when elected, and the same if they're not a U.S. citizen.
The same if they're not, the same if they're not a U.S. citizen for sure. The age is a little more nuanced, because you can imagine a scenario where the person is 34 years old at the time of the election, but he turns 35 before inauguration.
Well, then that would probably come up to us at some point. The state would make a decision and say he's ineligible, and we would have to decide that question then. But my point is, so what, adding qualifications to what term limit is your argument based on?
I'm just
confused.
Okay. With respect to maybe I'll start with the age example. If a state like Colorado says you can't appear on our presidential ballot unless you are 35 years old on the day of the election, that would be a violation of term limits, because there could be a 34-year-old on the day of the election who turns 35 before inauguration day. What Colorado has done here, what their Supreme Court has done, is similar, because under Section 3, President Trump needs to qualify during the time that he would hold office. And the Colorado Supreme Court is saying to President Trump, you have to show that you would qualify under Section 3 now, at the time of the election, or at the time that we, the state Supreme Court.
Now I understand.
Just a point of clarification so we're all on the same page. When you say term limits, you mean our decision in the term limits case.
Yes, I'm sorry.
The constitutional provision governing term limits.
Yes, U.S. term limits against Thornton. Maybe I should call it Thornton instead of term limits.
That would
I'm
be
sorry.
easier for you.